guys, welcome to our channel. This is Science Lectures. Please, thanks for being with us. Consider subscribing and comment in the comment section and like our video, please. So today we are going to look at transport. We are continuing with our series of cell biology and we want to look at transport across the cell. So having completed our video on the cell organelles, you please check out on the video on the cell organelles, different organelles, the nucleus, the cell membrane, the lysosome, ribosome, peroxisome. We looked at all those organelles in detail. So you please check out on those videos as we proceed with transport across the cell. So I think we should start off. So transport across the cell. So when you look at the cell, we need materials to be transported in and outside of the cell. So the transport will take place in two ways, in two basic ways. This transport can either be mediated, or non-mediated. Mediated transport and non-mediated transport. So if transport is non-mediated, we don't need any carriers for this transport to take place. So an example of non-mediated transport we can give is simple diffusion. Simple diffusion, you just need a molecule to simply diffuse without the aid of carriers. So simple diffusion is non-mediated. Simple diffusion is non-mediated. Then osmosis is also non-mediated transport. But mediated transport, we need something to mediate, to carry the molecule, to aid in transportation of the molecule. So in mediated transport, we can have again a division of passive mediated transport. And if we think of passive mediated transport, an example we can give here is facilitated diffusion. Facilitated diffusion. So for facilitated diffusion to take place, we need either a carrier protein or a channel protein, but no energy. In other words, the term passive, we are going to be using this term passive. Passive is where we have, no ATP, no energy in form of ATP is going to be utilized for transportation of this molecule. So this will happen in passive mediated transport, which is facilitated diffusion. Mediated because it requires, for facilitated diffusion, it will require either a channel or a carrier protein. Channel carrier protein to aid in transportation of the molecule. Passive because no ATP is required. So even simple diffusion requires no ATP, though it is non-mediated when compared with facilitated diffusion. Then again we have what we call active mediated transport. Active and mediated transport. We have passive mediated, then active mediated transport. So active mediated transport. Active requires energy in form of ATP. Mediated, it requires something to transport, let's say molecule that transports. It can be a carrier, can be a pump. So active mediated, we have, we can divide it also in pump transport, where we need a pump. A pump, and pumps work in active transport. So this can be primary active transport. Again, another division under pumps is primary active transport and secondary active transport. So under active mediated transport, number one we have pumps. Then number two, which pumps are divided into primary active and secondary active transport. Then number two we have vesicular transport. Vesicular transport. Vesicular transport. Which vesicular transport can further be divided into two again. Vesicular transport can either be exocytosis or endocytosis. But again, endocytosis can be divided into three. that is pinocytosis, phagocytosis, and receptor-mediated endocytosis. So we'll cover all this stuff in transport. So we say, first of all, our topic is cellular transport. So it can either be mediated transport or non-mediated transport. And mediated means, non-mediated means we don't need any carriers. So in non-mediated, we can have simple diffusion and osmosis. But under mediated transport, we can have passive mediated and active mediated. Passive mediated is where we don't require ATP, but we need a mediator, something to carry the molecules, like facilitated diffusion, where we need either a channel or a carrier. Then active mediated transport utilizes ATP because it's active, and it needs carriers, and it needs molecules to aid in transportation. And that can either be, active mediated can either be presence of pumps, which can lead to primary active transport or secondary active transport. Then vesicular transport can be either exocytosis or endocytosis, which endocytosis can further be divided into pinocytosis, phagocytosis, and receptor-mediated endocytosis. So that is a brief introduction to what we are going to cover all through transport. So we are going to start with non-mediated transport, that is simple diffusion and osmosis. So simple diffusion, So what is simple diffusion? This is movement of molecules. We are having our molecules from high concentration, or from a region of high concentration, from high concentration to a low concentration. So molecules are moving from a region of high concentration to a low concentration. So something is moving from where it is high to low. And this is just, molecules are moving along the concentration gradient. Along the concentration gradient. That is from where they are high in concentration to where they are low in concentration. We can give an example, a general example in the body. Let's say we are having oxygen gas moving from your blood capillaries to the alveoli of your lungs. Let's say we are having carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, then entering through the stomata of the leaf. So this one can apply as a simple diffusion. We're having molecules moving from a region of high concentration to low concentration. That's they are moving along the concentration gradient. But again, what we need to note is that in this case, no ATP is required. So this is a passive process. It is not an active process. So general examples: oxygen from your blood to alveoli or to the lungs, carbon dioxide from entering the stomata of a leaf. It is high in concentration in the outside environment, then less in the leaf, so it will enter the leaf. So how is this important when we are looking at a cell? If we have a cell, if we have our cell membrane, remember transport occurs along the cell membrane. So if this is our cell membrane, those are the phospholipids. It's a phospholipid bilayer. So molecules will, if it's diffusion, simple diffusion, molecules will just enter in and molecules will just leave the cell without aid of anything. So they will just pass through the cell. So which molecules are capable of diffusing? So this is, let's say this is our phosphate group. These are the fatty acids. This is a fatty acid. A phosphate group is negatively charged. Fatty acids are non-polar molecules. Non-polar molecules. So if they are non-polar molecules, they will aid movement of other non-polar molecules across the cell membrane. by simple diffusion. So which molecules can be transported by simple diffusion across the cell membrane? Molecules like oxygen, then we can have carbon dioxide also can move across the cell membrane. Due to the fact that the cell membrane, the fatty acids are non-polar, other non-polar molecules, small non-polar molecules. In fact, simple diffusion is transportation of small non-polar molecules. Small non-polar molecules are the ones that are crossing the cell membrane. So oxygen, carbon dioxide, we can have steroid hormones or lipid soluble hormones or steroid hormones can cross this membrane because they are non-polar. Then lipid soluble drugs. Lipid soluble drugs can also cross the cell membrane. So this is how simple diffusion can be important within the cell. So it can aid entry of oxygen, maybe release of carbon dioxide as a waste material from the cells. Then steroid hormones are capable of passing via the membrane and entering into the cell. Then lipid soluble drugs can also as well enter through the cell by that simple diffusion. But simple diffusion has factors affecting it. So what are some of these factors? So simple diffusion, another thing to take note of before we go to the factors, why it is able to occur within the cell is because of these non-polar, the non-polar fatty acids, allows the non-polar molecules to diffuse through the cell membrane. So what are some of the factors that will affect the rate of diffusion within the cell? Number one factor is the size of the diffusing molecules. Size of the molecules diffusing. Molecules. So the smaller the size of these molecules, the faster the rate of diffusion. Because we are having also simple diffusion, small non-polar molecules are just passing across the cell membrane. Then size of the molecules. Another important factor is temperature for diffusion. Temperature. So when the temperature is high, rate of diffusion is high because the kinetic energy of these molecules is also increased. So they diffuse faster as compared to when the temperatures are low. Then surface area, increased surface area increases the rate of diffusion. That is why the alveoli have an increased surface area just to increase the rate of simple diffusion. And then size of the molecules, the temperature. Then we have the steepness of the concentration gradient. Steepness of concentration gradient. So the steeper the concentration gradient, the higher the rate of diffusion, the higher the rate of diffusion within the cell. So these are some of the factors that will affect the rate of simple diffusion. Size of the molecule, the temperature, the size, the surface area, and the steepness of the concentration gradient. So that is it all.